them. As you know, the Deputy Mayor is over in Korea. I think she's coming back tomorrow. My understanding is that the trip has gone very, very successfully for the government in the city. Councillor Arthur has got an apology. Councillor Alf, which I think is a family matter. Councillor Callum, and as you'll know, Councillor Callum's mother-in-law passed away. We have passed on the best acknowledgements from you all to them. We've sent flowers. My understanding is the funeral is today. So just reflect on Callum and his family a little bit today, and I'm sure he appreciates texts and thoughts. I think those are all of the apologies I've got thus far. I don't see a Councillor Chris F here. I don't see Councillor Ross. Now my understanding is Councillor Ross's birthday today. Do you know that? Is anyone aware of that? How many times in my notes? Could be a lot. Can we wait to see it? Could be a considerable part of the agenda. Okay, so anyhow, I haven't heard anything from Councillor Ross, so we'll just presume that it's the latest. So I'll move all those. Second, please. Councillor Wayne. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Passed. Confirmation of minutes. I'll move the confirmation of the minutes of the GB meeting the 26th of February 2015. As a true and correct record. I move that. Second, Councillor Penny W. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Passed. Acknowledgements and achievements. You have the achievements there, but I just have two acknowledgements to make. Councillors, first of all, Peter Thomas. Peter Arthur Trevor Thomas passed away on the 20th of February at the age of 90. Peter served as a councillor in Birkenhead City Council from 1980 to 1983, and again from 1986 to 89, during which time he served as Deputy Mayor. He was elected to North Shore City Council in 1989, where he also served as Deputy Mayor. Peter also served on the Birkenhead Licensing Trust for several terms. As the Kaipatiki Local Board noted in their February meeting, Peter was well known for his contribution to politics and community service on the North Shore, including 35 years service with Birkenhead Rotary. He was a Justice of the Peace, an officer of St John's, was awarded the MNZM and served in the 18th Squadron of the RNZAF. Can we please all stand to acknowledge the passings of Peter? I secondly wish to acknowledge Melly Ali Uelu. Melly, who I met at the Samoan exhibition in the War Memorial Museum, passed away on the 11th of March at the age of 104. She was one of the Aucklanders whose story was told in the Auckland Museum's Entangled Islands exhibition, which examined New Zealand and Samoa's shared First World War history. She was born in 1910 in Samoa, the youngest of 3 children, and was schooled at the local church. She lost her 3 husbands and 7 children before moving to New Zealand with one of her daughters in 1960. Our beloved matriarch, Melly, had 30 grandchildren, 66 great-grandchildren, and 10 great-great-grandchildren. What a great contribution. She loved children. Oh, Melly, and she'll be grinning her head off. She's a real character, I tell you. She loved children, singing, which she did, and she sang to me when we were sitting down. I didn't join her, you'll be pleased to hear. Visits from family and friends, and telling stories of the old days, and she was a great raconteur. At the time of her passing, can we please stand in acknowledgement of those? Thank you, Councillor. extraordinary business?
Extraordinary business with me.
Yes?
Yeah. I'd sort of seek your support, Mr Mayor, for extraordinary business to include an item unprecedented public interest, particularly during this last period of time. I contacted the office of the Chief Executive earlier in the week asking for some sort of confirmation of the date as to I was told that unfortunately the Office of the Chief Executive doesn't hold that information, wasn't able to tell me. I'm committee as to what is happening with those works, when and that they are going to commence. Are they going to commence? I would suggest there's a great deal of public uncertainty. There isn't going to be opportunity for another government body meeting to occur if that April start point is indeed the start point. So I would suggest, if for no other reason other than for courtesy to the councillors, that matter be discussed today, and that councillors be given an opportunity to be updated and also to express their views.
Look, Councillor, I'm aware that you would like to have this as an extraordinary item of business. I'm not prepared to accept it as a matter of extraordinary item of business, but this is what I'm prepared to say to you, and it's certainly my desire, on the basis that we're able to conclude matters reasonably well here today. I'd be very happy for us to post this meeting, have a good update in terms of what is happening. I've had a number of discussions. I can convey to you some parts of those discussions, give you some indications as to progress that has been made with regard to, in particular, the stage 2 development and what I know thus far in terms of B2 and B3. So, Councillor, it's not appropriate by my assessment of the standing orders that we deal with this matter of extraordinary business, but it is most certainly appropriate that we receive an update and have an opportunity to discuss this matter, amongst ourselves, and it will be this matter back before us all on a fairly regular and steady occurrence. One, for updates. Two, for your work through the issue of stage 2 work that we need to prepare, and fourth, to continue to get updates from the courts of Auckland. So I understand the concern, Councillor. Absolutely share it. We have got a large body of continuing work and discussion with relationship to the port. Certainly it's what I want to lead through. I've indicated that, and so this is not a matter that is extraordinary in the sense that we see in the agenda. I'm making a ruling on that.
Just say, Mr Mayor, just on a matter of process, that the use of the informal chat over potato salad and sausage roll magnitude, and I don't think they should be getting used as a substitute for not addressing matters of extraordinary business such as this.
Councillor John, I take your view and I accept that people will have different views, but I'm the chair and I'm making that ruling on the basis that to discuss the port, and there'll be many, many more opportunities. What I am saying is that this is not by my assessment of the standing orders, and I wish for us to do it in an informed and measured way as we go through some of the challenges with the port.
So
I've made a ruling. Thank you very much.
no, well, I guess a simple question that might allay this matter and address the concerns of not me, just other people.
Stop, Councillor John. Stop. Yes, the point.
3.7.4. However, you've explained in section B1 the reason why the item is not on the agenda, and you've made a ruling with
Yep, I have.
I'm not discussing, I'm just asking for a simple clarification of your explanation, which I don't think is precluded in the standing orders.
I have clarified my explanation.
Point of order, Mr Chair.
Yes.
Can I ask the staff what happens if this matter? Because I don't think you are hearing the point that towards of which you are telling us you're going ahead and they don't care what the council or you think.
Stop, please. Look, Councillor Cathy, you are out of order and I ask you to withdraw. I want you to withdraw that. That was a personal insult to the chair. So withdraw, please, right now. Are we going to have a call? Councillor Kathy, I ask you to withdraw, not deserved. Councillor Kathy, please withdraw. It's not a fair comment.
I disagree.
I'm sorry, I want you to leave the room, please.
Point of clarification.
No, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, it's not on. It's not on. Right. Well, I've made this point very clear to you, councillors. Now stop, hands down. I've made a ruling and we're moving on. But I've made this point very clear. We are not going to tolerate nonsense behaviour.
Democratic right of
Councillor Kathy, no, it's not.
At the council table, I'm doing my job.
Not to insult the chair.
Doing my job.
Sorry. So
Point of clarification.
no, I don't. I'm not accepting a point of clarification, Councillor Frisk.
I need guidance. In the event that I would like to advance this issue, the delegate need to reside at the Auckland Development Committee. Would you please give clarification around to this matter at what of our committees or this governing body, which is the supreme body of this council, where to, by way of notice of motion or any other avenue that is available to councillors, where should that reside, and is it your intention to change delegations on the point of view?
No,
Given it is a constitutional issue.
No, sorry, that's not a point of clarification. That's just a procedural motion. We can a discussion that we can have post this in terms of delegations. Councillor Kathy.
I'm not going to actually.
Point of order. Councillor Kathy is
sorry.
here by right of her election, not for you to kick her out.
Oh, look, look. Thank you very much, Councillor Mike. I'm the chair of this organisation. I'm the mayor of the city, and Councillor Kath, I ask you
You're
to
not a
leave.
dictator.
Because
Do if I don't.
look, I'm asking you to leave. That's right. So we would just collapse the
Point of-
standing orders and there'd be no
Point of
more.
order.
So leave, please.
I Point of vote order, that she Mr. Chair. stays.
What is the number?
Point of order.
No, I'm not taking it.
Well, you've got to take it.
You have to take a
No,
point of order.
Councillor
number.
Lane, just explain. Councillor Kathy, please go. I asked you to withdraw, you wouldn't withdraw. There's only one course of
Withdraw
action
what?
available. and we
What?
discussed
I
it.
should have said anything.
Withdraw what,
You
sir?
made a inappropriate, no, it wasn't.
Well, what were the words, Mr.
Inappropriate.
Mayor?
I said he wasn't listening to the people
No,
of
you
Auckland and
did
the
not
ports of
say
Auckland.
that.
The
Well,
ports
what are
of
the
Auckland
words?
have said they're going
What
ahead
were
with
the
the
words?
What were the words?
anyway.
It was
Regardless
a
what the council
personal,
ought to
it
be
was a
about.
personal insult which
I
I
know.
asked her to withdraw.
Well, could you tell us what the words were, please?
It was a personal insult.
Oh, well, that's not satisfactory. Tell us what the words were.
I said the mayor's not listening.
No, that wasn't it, Councillor.
That's what I think.
Councillor
was said.
Kathy, look, if you don't go, I'm going. Sorry, I'm going to withdraw until such time as the councillor leaves.
Time for a cup of tea.
Is it your birthday, Ross?
Thank you.
Happy birthday.
Okay. I was so pleased when I got to the council building, I thought I'm here earlier than anyone else. Wrong building, wrong building, never mind.
backdrop of the fact that we're going through fast change and fast growth on all fronts. And while that presents extraordinary opportunities, it also presents us with very significant challenges as people with high expectations for being able to promote change are coming up against people whose expectations are totally the contrary. So the great thing about growth is you've got growth. The difficult thing about growth is that it also provides us with challenges beyond the norm. Just the second thing, councillors. So while we're going through some of these challenging discussions, and we've certainly had in the last 4.5 years, in the chair, I've by and large been fairly tolerant of comment and in my debate in anyone's direction. And I just felt that that was critical. That's part of my political style, but secondly, it's part of how we need to do business with each other. And if you see that example coming from me, then my hope is that we don't personalise it against either myself or others sitting around the table. Tough job, as you know. You mostly have experience sitting in the chair, and it's difficult about an issue, and we're dealing with a challenging issue in the ports matter. There's no doubt about that. At the start of this year, that we would do everything we could, ever compromising our passion and our thoughts for across the table, and to do that. And I certainly do not want to constrain our debate on any in terms of the port. That will be with us consistently, and in fact the next time that'll be with us in a formal way is on the 1st of April at Auckland Developmental. And what I want to propose to you, councillors, and I guess what comes to direct, is that that will be the next opportunity for us to formally deal with the matter of the port. And in that discussion, certainly post some of the views and the proposals that I have been working on to move this matter forward, no matter where we are in it. Some of those who properly confirm as a way forward in that meeting and maybe even before that meeting. But councillors, I want to ask you to give, without constraining public debate, as we go forward in the next few days and weeks, how we might progress this matter as a responsible body. So, that is the reason why I have made and respect all your various views on that. But on this day, I've made that ruling. And that, councillors, there are no notices of motion, so I want to move on to item 11, please, which is a verbal update on the World Masters Games. And in that, I want to acknowledge Julia Parford is here as the chair of the local board, and apologise for you arriving in the midst of our discussion. And Jenna, great to see you, and apologise for the delay in here.
Thank you, Your Worship. Good morning, councillors. Past Gina, but we will show a short video of the games, or leading to the games. But just these games are going to be very, very significant to Auckland and to the country. Games event post Rugby World Cup. We're in the midst at the moment of sporting fever. This event isn't like Cricket World Cup, and it's not like Rugby World Cup. It's quite unique, but it's very, very significant. It's the world's largest multi-sport event. So I don't just to sort of put it into context, people look at Masters events, what it really means, and who's well. So I don't want to say Steel Jet On will relate well to this, because it features Lord Sebastian Coe, who is our ambassador, one of our ambassadors, and a man that strongly supports World Masters Games.
Mr. Mayor, I could well be in these games.
Wonderful.
I don't think you're old enough, are you?
Jim.
Kia ora. Welcome to Auckland. Welcome to our games.
a mixture of footage that we took from Torino, the games prior to us, and obviously some of the fabulous footage that we have available to us through AT. So, look, thank you very much, Your Worship and councillors, we have coming up in just over 2 years' time, and it's a real pleasure to be able to take you through some of the detail. I'm conscious of time, so I am going to move through this reasonably quickly so we have got sufficient time at the end for any questions you might have. What I thought was a useful place to start, because I'm conscious some of you will be less familiar with the World Masters Games, was how it sits in the structure of global sport. So I'm sure many of you will be familiar with the International Olympic Committee. Well, the World Masters Games is a product that is very much aligned with the IOC. Basically, back in the early 80s, the IOC decided that they needed to have an entity that was going to be the guardian of masters sport globally. The IOC themselves look after youth sport and elite sport internally, but what they've done is they've mandated an organisation called the International Masters Games Association to look after masters. Now, a lot of what we'll talk about today will be very similar to what you'll be familiar with an Olympic type event. So in the same way that you have a summer and winter Olympics, you also have a summer and winter World Masters Games. And back in 2012, many of you will remember that Auckland was awarded the rights to host the Summer World Masters Games in 2017. So the Games have been taking place since 1985, and the previous hosts are shown within the packs that you have. What I think is pretty apparent in glancing at that slide is that places such as Canada and Australia have hosted the Games many times, and that's quite simply because they love sport. They are well in tune with competing in sport later in life. They understand the benefits of sport and remaining active and the difference that can make to your well-being, and therefore they've been fantastic hosts of the Games to date. The most successful Games to date was Sydney in 2009. They have had a spectacular variety of venues to use, obviously coming off the back of the Olympics. The most recent Games, as I just referred to earlier, was in Torino, Italy. And what we know about a World Masters Games athlete is that there's three main drivers for why they get involved. Firstly, there's the absolute love of sport. Secondly, there's the desire to socialise with like-minded people. And the third reason is because they like the opportunity to experience new destinations. So Sydney managed to tick the box very well with the sport piece. Italy did very well from a destination piece. And the challenge that we've laid out to ourselves is we need to get world-class execution in each one of those three areas to ensure that this is the best Games yet. So just a bit about how we are structured. After the Games were secured back in 2012, a limited liability company was established. AT is the single shareholder of that entity, so we are in essence a CCO. A skills and expertise based board was recruited, and Sir John Wells is obviously the chair of our board. But we're incredibly fortunate with the calibre of directors that we have on board helping to steer the direction of the organisation and the Games. Currently we're a team of 13. I feel incredibly privileged to be the Chief Executive of the organisation, and we'll grow to a team of about 50. Now, when you compare 50 people delivering an event that has 3 times the number of athletes of the Summer Olympics, that is a relatively modest sized team. And the reason for that is because we need a substantial volunteer workforce to assist us with delivery, and we'll talk more about that shortly. The other thing that I think is really important to note in regards to the structure and the people around this event is that we've started to build a fabulous family of ambassadors. Many of you will be familiar with ambassadors programs that have gone around events previously. An ambassador program for us is even more critical because of the diversity of the type of audience that we're wanting to connect to. And, you know, having someone like Lord Sebastian Coe on board as our International Goodwill Ambassador is phenomenal in terms of helping us connect with the offshore audience. But what we've got up there is the start of a very passionate and committed group of New Zealanders who are very much focused on making this the best Games yet and the most fantastic opportunity for our place and our people. In terms of the dollars and cents, Sir John mentioned that this is the largest event New Zealand will have hosted since Rugby World Cup, and in line with that, it is the largest investment that both central government and the City of Auckland have ever made in an event outside of Rugby World Cup. So we've got a $34 million delivery budget. Auckland Council endorsed a commitment of $11 million back in, I think it was 2011, 2012. Central government matched that with 11 million, and we have 12 million still to find. The business case behind the games is a very strong one, and that's because the people that we are talking about here are real people. They are not elite athletes. They want to come, they want to spend their money, they want to experience the destination. They have the disposable income available to really enjoy their experience around the event. So we're forecasting $36 million worth of GDP and 250,000 visitor nights to Auckland alone during the games period. What I'll talk about in a bit more detail shortly is the type of people that are coming, but the data from previous events suggests that we can see 54% of our international athletes staying for either 9 days on top of their time in Auckland, pre or post. So the visitation of this event is significant. Obviously, $12 million is a significant sum of money to be finding over a 4-year period, and I'm really delighted to say that our commercial family is growing. Incredibly fortunate to have Barfoot and Thompson on board as our presenting partner. Probably one of the greatest supporters of Auckland in sport you could hope to find. Next month we will be announcing Air New Zealand as our airline partner. Late last year we announced Sky City as our hotel and fine dining partner, and last month we announced Peter Pit as our volunteer catering partner. So we're coming along very, very well. We've also been incredibly fortunate with the support that NZCT has provided. But it is the start of the journey. We still have a wee way to go to close the shortfall. The way it's structured is we need to secure around 7.4 million from athlete registrations and the rest from commercial sponsorship. But certainly very pleased with how things are progressing so far. So I guess that should hopefully give you a bit of context around what the Games is, how we're structured, and what the financial situation is with the organisation. Moving more into the games themselves and what you can expect to see, there are a few key facts that I always like to lead with when I'm introducing the games, and so John touched on a couple of those in his introductory remarks. So, world's largest multi-sport event, largest event New Zealand will have hosted since Rugby World Cup, 3 times the number of athletes that you would see compete in the Summer Olympics. It is an event that is very inclusive in its nature. So the only barrier to get involved is your age, and I'm going to surprise a few of you when we talk about age shortly. One of the things we're really committed to is making sure that this is a celebration of sport and activity from grandchildren through to grandparents. The games are taking place during the school holiday period, so the 21st to the 30th of April in 2017. There's a whole bunch of quite vanilla operational reasons why we needed to fall in the shoulder season for tourism and why we needed to fall within the school holiday period. But one of the things we're most excited about is the ability that that gives us to engage with young people and kids and provide some really invaluable messages about health and well-being as a result of the games being here. So, the participants, I remember one of the first interviews I did with Martin Devlin on the games, and he said to me nearing the end of the interview, he said, I just don't understand why you're so excited about an event for old people. And, I sort of laughed and I said, well, yeah, but the sad thing is that we actually all qualify for this, so it's certainly not an event for old people. The minimum age for each of our sports varies. So you're a masters athlete at 25 in swimming, 27 in touch and rowing. About 10 of our sports, the minimum age is 30, the rest are 35. The average age of a World Masters Games athlete is 42. Highest representation tends to be 40 to 49. So we've spent a lot of time really getting that message across and making sure that people realise this is not an event just for older people in their 80s and 90s. That said, we are very much looking forward to seeing some fabulous displays from the 80 and 90-year-olds come games time. I've touched on a lot of the content that this slide talks to already, but probably one of the things just to make note of is that the average income is over $100,000 per annum. So that really links in nicely with the ability that these people have to come, spend money, experience destination. And for us, the way we're structuring our entire sport program is that so it is very easy to get up to Matakana, to get out to the West Coast beaches, to get over to Waiheke, for them to experience all of Auckland in between their time playing sport. So obviously the hero of the World Masters Games is sport. It's arguably not the most exciting bit, but it is very much the centre and it is the main reason why people will be coming. So we have an incredibly integrated approach with sport. We are working with all of the NSOs, the RSOs and the RSTs and clubs. We have partnered with these agencies to help us from a delivery perspective. So what you've got in front of you is the 28 sports that will feature in the games. But what isn't often apparent to people is that within each of those sports there are a number of disciplines. So if we look at cycling as an example, you've got road, you've got criterium, you've got time trial, you've got velodrome and you've got mountain. So what that results in is 5 very different competition venues, 5 very different operational requirements, and very different sets of complexities for us to take care of. Obviously Martin Snedden is on our board, Sir John was on the board of Rugby World Cup, and we quite often chuckle looking back at what we thought was complicated with Rugby World Cup. Rugby World Cup was a breeze from an operational perspective compared to this. 28 sports, 45 disciplines. Yeah. No, I do remember opening night. But what you've got, Mayor Brown, is within a 10-day period, you're condensing 6 weeks of activity into 10 days. So the operational complexities that we have to deal with day after day, there's no room not to get it right because it's such a condensed period of time. Just a couple of other things to talk about re-sport. 2 of our sports, so orienteering and weightlifting, choose to hold their world championships as part of the games. So from a New Zealand perspective, you would think orienteering was a relatively small sport. Pleased to let you know that we will have over 2,500 orienteers. So that is huge. The majority of those, because of the nature of where the sport is strongest, will come from Europe. And we also have 8 sports which offer a para-discipline. And, you know, when you look at the Commonwealth Games in Glasgow, they only had 6. So we're really proud of that, and we believe it speaks further to the fact that this is very much an inclusive event that everyone can get involved with. In the back of the packs that you've got, there is a map. And what that map tries to show is the spread of competition venues right across Auckland. There's another slide in your pack which tries to break down the competition venues by ward. And hopefully what you'll agree is that unlike a lot of events, this is an event that will connect with all communities right across the region. And that enables us to tell some fantastic stories through clubs, through schools, through business associations that is very unique to the event we're talking about here. The other thing just to note is that we have partnered with the Waipa District Council, and the reason for that is with the World Masters Games, you're not allowed to spend any money on capital upgrades, so you have to use the existing venues you have. I'm sure there would be no one that would disagree that the velodrome that's been built in Cambridge and Karapiro are 2 world-class facilities. They're within an hour-and-a-half drive time of the CBD in Auckland, and they will provide a fantastic platform for us to use for those 2 sports come games time. And the council down there has been really enthusiastic and supportive, which is great. I touched on volunteers a bit earlier. I guess to put the 5,500 number in context, nationally for Rugby World Cup we only had 5,000. So 5,500 from predominantly the Auckland region is an enormous number. The other challenge we've got with this is we're obviously needing to attract 25,000 athletes to compete, and we're needing to attract these 5,500 volunteers. Now you could say that typically they're the same type of audience. So for us, we're going to have to get the messaging nicely aligned so that we're able to hit both numbers. The other thing, just in regards to volunteers, I think New Zealand has had a very successful, typical type formula that it's rolled out around volunteer programs over the last 4 to 5 years. New Zealanders love their volunteering. I think Aucklanders get right in behind events at any opportunity they can. One thing we haven't really cracked previously is the engagement of the tertiary sector. I think we've done well with primary age children because we can tap into it through the school structure. What we're trying to do is figure out how we can crack tertiary and have a really comprehensive program that is both curriculum focused, volunteering, enabling them things like we've got to design our medals. You know, is that a project that we could give to a tertiary organisation where the students actually come up with options for what our medals might look like? So we're particularly excited about that and are very confident that it'll be a great opportunity for the students, but also very helpful for us in hitting that 5,500 number. So I mentioned sport is obviously the hero and right at the centre of things with the games, but there is a lot more that is going to be happening, and what we're really committed to is making sure that people are aware that whether you want to compete or volunteer, you still have the ability to celebrate this fantastic festival of sport that's going to be taking place in Auckland over a 10-day period. So we're going to be delivering an entertainment hub on the waterfront that'll be free to everyone. During the day, we're wanting it to be very much more of an educational youth family focus. We're during the school holiday period, which lends itself nicely to that sort of aspiration. Then moving more into sort of late afternoon, evening, it will become more of your bands, your hospitality, your more party environment. Completely free, open to everyone for the full duration of the event. We'll also be having opening and closing ceremonies. Now the opening ceremony follows the exact same format as the opening ceremony to the Olympics. The likely location for that is Eden Park, and that's because it is the only venue we have large enough to host something of this scale. But we feel that venue is going to be a fantastic showcase for the internationals to really enjoy as well. If you look at our 25,000 athlete figure, where they're roughly coming from is 50% offshore, 50% domestic. And then if you break the domestic figure down, we're anticipating a quarter will come from Auckland. Sorry, half will come from Auckland and half will come for the rest of New Zealand. So from a quarter perspective, you've got a quarter from Auckland, a quarter from the rest of New Zealand, a quarter from Australia, and then a quarter from the rest of the world. So the number of Aucklanders that we can expect to see engaged from a competition perspective, a volunteering perspective, and then enjoying these festival aspects that will be happening outside of competition venues free of charge is huge. How things often work with events, and this will be familiar to many of you with events that have gone by in previous years, is that you have an organising committee that delivers core event, and then you have support agencies that deliver leverage and legacy programs. Now, that exact same structure is in place for the World Masters Games, where you have our organisation that is delivering core games, and then you have ATEED, which is leading the leverage and legacy program. So what ATEED has done is they've formed a group with a number of different agencies who are working through the possibilities for what we might be able to deliver from World Masters Games. And the 4 legacy goals are on the slide in front of you, and what we can arrange to have distributed to you post this meeting is hard copies of the leverage and legacy plan if that is of interest. What I thought might be useful is just to summarise very briefly what we've talked about this morning into a slide that is really focused on what's in it for Auckland. And as is the case with major events, and as per the major event strategy that Auckland has, the economic argument is incredibly important to forming the business case. And the numbers around this event, because of the type of people we're talking about, are huge. So $36 million worth of GDP, 250,000 visitor nights. But I think one of the really unique aspects is the number of different ways that there are for Aucklanders to get involved. They're able to compete, they're able to volunteer, they're able to join in the festivities that will be happening right around over this 10-day period completely free of charge. So for us, we're wanting to get out, we're wanting to connect with real people in the communities and make sure that they are aware of what they can do around this event. So just to wrap up in the interests of time, we've been on this journey for 2 years already. We have 2 years to go, and it's an incredibly critical 2 years. What I often say to my team is that the final year doesn't often count with an event because you're in rollout mode. So 2015 is probably the most critical year for us. This year we have to finalise our value proposition. So what are we actually going to put into market? What are the price points and the inclusions that are going to help us get 25,000 athletes, 50% of those needing to come from offshore? This is the year that we'll launch our volunteer program. This is the year that we celebrate 2 years to go and 500 days to go. It's the year that we release the concept and the venue for the opening ceremony and the venue for the entertainment hub. So there is an awful lot that is going on this year, and you'll start to hear more and more about the games. We've been very mindful that with the fabulous summer of events that Auckland has had, there hasn't been a huge amount of point in us doing anything too vocal. So we are looking forward to the Black Caps winning on Sunday and cricket being over. Volvo is now out, and then once FIFA has moved through in June, you will start to hear a lot about the World Masters Games because it will be the next big thing coming through for people to get excited about. In terms of ongoing engagement with elected members, I think this slide could almost be reversed because the reality is I'm very happy to continue engaging with each of you and your local board colleagues however you would like me to. What we have been suggesting to this point is that we have regular briefings with the Mayor, Deputy Mayor and Councillor Fletcher, and that annually we come and present to the governing body. This is the first governing body presentation, obviously, since Auckland was successful in winning the games. Following this briefing, I am doing a roadshow with every local board, where I'm just working through the process currently of getting a slot on each of their agendas to go and personally present. And one of the things I will be asking each of those local boards is, what would you like to hear from us moving forward and how can we keep you informed? So in the same way, please do, following this briefing, if you would like more information, if you would like to hear from me more regularly, very happy to do so. Just need to receive some guidance from each of you, please. So look, that is what we had prepared. Have tried to whip through that content very quickly, so I apologise if there were some points I didn't spend too long on, but both Sir John and I are very happy to answer any questions you might have for us.
Sir John and Gina, look, that was a stunning presentation and really exciting. I think the community has no idea how big this will be. They sort of got it with Rugby World Cup and of course Cricket World Cup, but this will be maybe even bigger. So look, and a great heads up for us, and it looks like you've got it well under control. Now I've got a batting lineup, to use the vernacular. So else who wants to build? You know, we'll just get the batting lineup first. Anyone else who wants to come in? Right.
Thank you. Fantastic presentation. I'm really pleased you got the chance to talk to us today. Just looking at the visitor numbers, what's the strategy around accommodation? Because we know in the last couple of weeks with the Eagles concert, all sorts of people were staying in Whangarei. So is there discussion? Yeah, seriously. Is there discussion around that with anyone around developing our accommodation nights, etc.? Because I hope we've got enough room.
Yeah, so through the chair, the DVD and close to their competition venues. We also know they like a nice variety of accommodation. So absolutely there are people who will want to stay in 4- and 5-star hotels, but equally there are a lot that will want apartments, motels, bed and breakfasts. So the dates for the games were actually selected in consultation with the Hotel Council and the New Zealand Tourism Association. This is the period of the year where they can accommodate it, and we feel we have sufficient capacity within Auckland to manage the numbers we have. We're just going through the process now of appointing AOT Group, which is a travel and accommodation booking services partner, who will help facilitate that process for us with both domestic and international visitors.
Thank you.
Actually, Brett O'Reilly was telling me that they're having a hospo meeting very shortly with all of the hoteliers, those that are looking to build, etc., to really start working out the fact that we've got about a 3,000 bed shortfall at the moment. So it's all hands to the oars. Right, got to Councillor Bill.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, invitation, and personally, you have every confidence in your abilities to present and pull through, make this all happen because of your works with the V8s down in Franklin. That went seamlessly. From a spectator percentage, it was perfect. I'm sure behind the scenes, just like this, there will be the odd little thing, the hiccup that needs to be sorted. Linda asked my first question about the accommodation. My second one is potentially about your paying to enter. That will cover that. You're confident with that?
Yes, we are. The balancing track will be that we've still got, as Jenna said, we've still got some of the commercial program to put in place. One or two items of revenue that we're getting to nail down, and clearly closer to the event we'll have a better idea. But as Jenna said also, we've structured this in a way that's quite unique to the event, in that we've got 3 value propositions for people to take the sort of, just pick the sporting vernacular, sort of gold, silver and bronze. So the bronze is obviously the cheaper option, which will probably have more appeal to local people because they won't use some of the requirements that others from overseas will use. But overall, we're pretty happy at this stage. Yeah.
Second question, sir, is the quality of our venues. I know we're not allowed to put capital into them. In your opinion, are they up to scratch, fit for purpose for this sort of prestigious event?
We had we took the board around, management around before, late last year, and actually it astounded me that both the number and the standard and the quality of the venues. Now some of them needed a little bit of paint here and there, and a clean and a sweep, but overall it will be stunning. Things that we didn't really appreciate, and I think just on a broader front, if it ever got to considering making a bid for the Commonwealth Games, we would be very well placed, with 1 or 2 exceptions, to be able to cater for the facility side of things.
That's certainly great to hear. My last question, your indulgence, sir, is about the volunteers. So I know, Jenny, you'll have some sort of program to encourage and get the volunteer numbers up and running. When will that start? Is that going to be after the FIFA competition?
Yeah, absolutely. So you'll start to see more of that in market towards the end of this calendar year, and we will be taking registrations from beginning of next year.
Thank you.
Good. You ready with your registrations, Councillor Bill?
Definitely.
Councillor Denise.
Thank you so much for the presentation. Incredibly exciting. Anyone who knows about this international subculture knows that these are people with disposable income, and when they come, it is for the love of sport, but it's so much more sort of social interaction, the partying, and responsible partying.
Bit of sport partying.
And when we talk about hotel stay shortfall, what a good problem to have, and we've got that timeline to address that. I just had a couple of questions regarding, and you've touched on it, Sir John, in regards to bid for Commonwealth Games. So you mentioned here on your title, the Games headlines, catalyst for the next mega event. So it's fantastic that it's an enthusiastic presentation and you're forward looking already. So what you're putting in place, you're hoping will be in place for our next mega event. Flesh that a little bit more, and then perhaps retrospectively, what are your challenges off the back of Rugby World Cup that you're now facing that you need to address?
Yeah, look, through the chair, this is something we talk about very boldly internally. This has got to be the catalyst for the next big thing. We have proven as a country we can deliver single discipline major events. The global world of sport knows we can do that. We haven't yet proven we can deliver multi-sport, multi-venue major events. And this event is the one that will do that and provide that level of confidence. So we're excited about the IP that we're developing. We're excited about the capability that we're building within Auckland and New Zealand to support those longer term aspirations. In regards to the challenges, reflecting on the challenges that we've had with previous major events, probably the greatest one we have encountered with this, and I think we'll continue to encounter it through to games time, is that we're talking about working with 28 different sports. So within those sports, yes, you have your rugbies, you have your bowls, you have your netballs that are very well established sports that have run major events many times before. But at the other end of the spectrum, you've got sports such as weightlifting, orienteering, archery, that are volunteer organisations. You know, some of these sports don't have a single paid resource in the country. So what we're having to do is build their capability, help them learn as we move through the journey. And the legacy that will leave their sport with at the end of the games is huge. So that's the challenge. We've said quite openly that for us, every sport and every venue has to be delivered to the same standard. So absolute operational excellency across the board, and that is a challenge. You know, we could deliver rugby, netball, golf, bowls tomorrow if we had to. There are a bunch that there is a lot more work that we need to do.
Just to pick up, elaborate on one point. What will be the next big event after this? Touched on Commonwealth Games, but the composition of the international IMGA, International Masters Federation, Games Federation, comprises international federation presidents, the president of basketball, the president of hockey, all of the sports. So what we'll be able to do for Auckland is to showcase what Auckland can offer those individual sports for their own World Championships in the future. Now, many of them have been held here in the past, but these people, many of them will be coming for the first time ever. So that's a legacy that we can offer in the sports side.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, a 2-year lead in time ought to be enough for councillors to start training and sign up. I'll see you on a start line, Councillor Walker.
When will you around the base? I'm
That's too small for me, Councillor Brooks.
Not like us.
Yeah, you look way too fit. It's just not fair. Right, Councillor Wayne, you can take her on. Yeah, come on, Wayne.
Yeah, well, it depends on the sport. Weightlifting, maybe just got a question about Jen's question around leverage. I mean, just looking at the list of where it is at, there are some obvious opportunities around public transport and making sure that we've got an excellent relationship with Auckland Transport, possibly free travel, and that operates sometimes as part of the package. So I'm making the assumption that we're really maxing out on that, because a lot of these retired people come from cities, well, they're not necessarily retired, of course.
All the 25-year-olds.
Masters. They come from other cities where they've got often better than excellent public transport. So I have a question around that, and the other related questions around leverage that go in part to funding is opportunities to collaborate with other cities, councils around New Zealand. I don't know whether it's possible to extract some contribution from them in some way, shape or form, because as much as people are coming to Auckland, I'm making the assumption many of them will be travelling around New Zealand. And the other issue, especially for local businesses, because there's a lot of paraphernalia that people buy, and rather than have it made in China, it'd be great if it was made in IOC and allow for that.
Yeah, so look, in regards to your question around leverage and engaging other parts of New Zealand, we are holding a forum in 2 months' time with all of the regional tourism authorities, and that is exactly to that point, Councillor, where we're wanting to understand from them how active they would like to be involved in the Games in making the athletes aware that they can travel more broadly around the country post the Games. And you know, there's an athlete experience piece, customer service piece there for us, but also it's another revenue stream, so we're interested to explore that more widely. Public transport is absolutely critical, and it will form part of the value proposition. We're working very closely with Auckland Transport. David Warburton and his team have been brilliant. there will be 2 of the 3 packages that athletes have available to them, which will have public transport, integrated transport included within their accreditation. So that is very much top of mind for us.
And just a related question that goes to procurement, involvement of other councils and the like. We've got a budget of $11 million. Is it conceivable that we could pull back on that? We could make some savings if your sponsorship, your revenue sources from other areas are better?
Well, what we're challenged with is ensuring that the event meets the standard of expectation that the Masters Games require. So that's going to be one of our challenges. So as to savings, I think the budget will be able to meet the budget, but I don't think there'll be necessarily significant savings within that. But when we get closer to the event itself, we'll have a better feel as to how we're going with some of these costs and the revenue side of things. I think we'll get there. But we've also got to be conscious that we're going to attract a large number, as Jenna said, a quarter of 25,000 people from offshore. So our offshore marketing engagement will not be cheap. So some of that excess, if we have some, we want to sort of target into particular audiences.
Thank you. Very good, Councillor Wayne. And last, Councillor King.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Jenna, in the Rugby World Cup, we saw 6 cruise ships in port for that month of October. I was just having a look. Is the cruise industry at all going to play a role in and around this? Are there any program changes? Are they going to be part of the accommodation solution?
Yeah, no, look, good.
Is there anything that, I know it's end of April, but is the answer no?
No, not at all. Really good question. So we've been working with Ports of Auckland since the dates were selected, because obviously the movement of ships is incredibly important, of the cruise operators in about 6 weeks' time, to make sure that they're across the detail and they understand the opportunity. I think some operators might look to promote the games and package up trips so that it works nicely within our period, which we would certainly be very supportive of. But do we need cruise ships to deal with the accommodation numbers? No, we don't. There is sufficient accommodation today to deal with the numbers that we are projecting. But I mean, it looks pretty spectacular having ships down there during the event time. And we already know, I think during the games period, there are 4 ships that are already programmed to be coming in and out. So that cruise season is getting longer and longer each year.
Very good. Councillor White.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So you don't see any conflict with cruise ships and the event organising?
Through the chair, look, we are aware of the challenges that the cruise industry has with events and the need to manage the requirements operationally that both we have as event organisers and the cruise sector does. Obviously, for us, we are part of the Auckland Council family, so we understand the economic benefit of having a number of cruise ships constantly coming through. So we've been working with Ports of Auckland. Yeah, we've been working with them since day one. We feel confident.
Can-do attitude.
Yep.
Thank you.
Excellent. Councillor Chris F.
No, I was just going to be happy to move or second the
Okay, well then you're very welcome to move, and Councillor Wayne will second. Outstanding. Tina and Sir John, great to see you here, and keep up the very good work.
Thank you all for your time.
Thank you.
Okay, now councillors, we next have item 12, appointment of Auckland Council electoral officer. But I just want to acknowledge some of our local representatives here. I didn't acknowledge Janet Fitzgerald, who's sitting there beside Julia. Good to see you, Janet, as a local board member. Also from the Rodney Local Board, Chair Brenda.
Good morning.
Morning, Brenda. And James. Great to see you here. And Glenn from the Independent Māori Statutory Board. Kia ora, Glenn. All right. So this is a recommendation relating to the appointment of the Auckland Council electoral officer. To note the recommendation, there is to appoint Dale Osowski, who you will all know of many years experience in dealing with local council elections.
morning, councillors. Very quickly, this report outlines the fact that we have started with the planning of the elections for 2016, and that we are trying to take a very customer-focused approach, both for candidates and for voters. We'd like to reach at least a 40% turnout, which would be an increase from last election, which was disappointing at less than 35%. So we've got a whole lot of ideas that we are working on to try and run a really, really good election. And we have created a working group which has met 3 times already, and are giving us some really good ideas to work with them. We've also been engaging with our advisory panels, asking them for their advice and ideas to engage with the different communities that they represent. So that's well underway and it's going well. Happy to answer any questions that you may have on that part of that. Second part of the report is around the appointment of an electoral officer. Dale Ofsowski is the Managing Director of Election Services, who is our provider of election services. So all the operational aspects of running the elections. He ran them in 2013 and will be our provider again for 2016. In effect, he does manage all the operational and legislative aspects of the elections, and we have found that he has done so very ably. He was our Deputy Electoral Officer for the last elections.
Very good. Right. Questions, councillors, comments? Councillor Cathy.
Margaret, I'm quite surprised at setting the bar so low for voter turnout at 40%. I mean, why wouldn't we set it at 50%? Even though you might not reach there for a few years. It just doesn't make any sense to me.
So we had a first steering group meeting earlier this week with the different executives that we have on the steering group, and they asked us exactly that question, 100%. So we're happy to, and this was before the report was written, but we're very happy to set the bar at 50% to try and stretch ourselves. It will be difficult to achieve, and there's a lot of components that are beyond our control. We also need to be careful that we balance the very an ambitious target with the budget that we can spend, because obviously the funds are not infinite, and in terms of communications it will take a lot of effort. But yes, we're very happy to take the challenge.
Just remind us that the turnout was at 34%?
Yeah.
34.8.
34.8. So we had a 16% drop on 2010.
Election before, so
yeah.
It's not an unreasonable target.
So, and we were below the average for the country last time. So it would be a big ask to get it back up to that 50%. But I mean, absolutely, Cathy, we take your point that we should have an aspirational target, and really it should be higher than that, frankly. But
aspirational should be 100%.
General elections are 75. That's right. Councillor Denise.
Thanks for the report. Just want a little bit of clarification, and I'm sure there's lots more details to come and lots more iron out to come, but the role of staff, so in item 13, encouraging council and DHB staff ambassadors, encouraging their family and friends to enrol and vote. So is that an admission that staff don't really talk about elections when it comes election time? And then over the page in 25, dedicated seconded staff. So, you know, without obviously needing to go into lots of detail, what's the thinking around here? Staff have previously either ignored the elections or have had to work on top of a working model that's feasible.
So with regards to the ambassadors, well, 8,500 staff, as you know, is a very we've got a very diverse composition from our staff, and we haven't in the past concentrated particularly internally to play that role of ambassador. So while we keep people informed and we let them know what's happening, it's putting the bar higher in asking everybody to, you know, talk to their friends or family. And this was a focus for the recent LTP consultation, where we came as we would like to put this time.
Issues for us people. So the last election, last general, the Electoral Commission website, you could younger people, and when I say younger people, of enrolment, and most of people over 40 are not. So with the Electoral Commission to encourage a bit of a role there in encouraging them.
Be able to ask our staff to messages and talk about it. Your second question around staff, obviously the election, we don't have dedicated, and what we found last time, a bigger part of their time spending leave for the elections, and we found that we ended up quite at the end of the round is team that can actually work in the field, and we don't have the problem.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
So, which is a very low budget, and when we talk to them, a letter to every enrolled in this household, it's time to do so. The figure that they spend on the communication.
I think it's been made reasonably clear that, so yeah, the amount they spend on
significant. And then I'm aware that enrolment is that correct?
Not before the local elections. One is enrolment, and they're very happy to implement our communication and use theirs and multiply the impact. Then the second part of the stand, and the third one is encourage people stream that we were talking about
turn out that all ghost mark person standing there and then don't, and there's an invisible person there. And agencies are often political participation, and hence will come up to billboard with 1,000 one word to put on that billboard. I know that we've got that there's some kind of oversight on this, because they'll try and be the electoral money. We won't be seeing many orange people. They're going to be relying heavily on participatory markets. A group of people independently designated, and that actually gets cut through. So is there going to be a process where we can market is going to garner?
So there's two things we could do for this. Reference group that we're very diverse on it, but we had academics, we had a whole range, we had journalists, so we could. The second thing is there's been asked us, so we could run reaction with a steering group and ELT who will be overseeing all of this.
Yeah, that's good to hear. Another stand for office, and I see that you've got two, because I think in 2010 county it was really important. And finally, I note that there's not a for Auckland Council because of our that may reappear at a future.
So we've tried very hard to be considered for a trial, really, but at the moment, any relations, and we're working with the Department of voting trial for any by-election that would happen after to case, then we'll continue to push for the next election. That I'm really a big obstacle research to find your letterbox more, and if we're not allowed that the soonest we could roll any kind of e-voting would be when we see the decline of New Zealand Post already now.
General election, 560 million. That's just hopeless. Councillor Ross.
Dave, one of the told it was the data capitals and 3 semicolons got turned into commas, so they were a little bit nonsensical. Obviously, so, and the issue is can they profiles as they are to a data entry operator, but English and grammar, and does it appropriately embarrass themselves the other, and point that out. It was
Yeah, we will.
I was just going to say that I'm happy to move, but in doing so, on this, the appointment is a person that, and I see that as a real on the word.
All those in favour say aye. Right. Now, AGM and conference. We generally Councillor Linda last time.
Going down, but vested in accommodation or anything like that.
Dear.
Good accommodation.
Be that
The other big, I did go to one 2 years ago, so I do need to turn.
New Zealand is our, if you like, actually want to come and that survey that they've done. We did put it, we did say come to New Zealand, and we really are making huge inroads in government, but the local boards go and they're really good. A lot of them go.
Conspicuous by absence because 24 laws, but we've had a full fill it every year.
Yeah.
Right, so we can take more.
It's been a reasonable contingent. We've got preparedness. It would be good to have first term ago. Generally indicating preparedness. That's fine.
Right, count me in.
Okay, right, so that's Councillor Wayne, Councillor Mayor.
Can I just make, it would be good, I said fit for the local board, I think that's fair. I think good representation.
No? Okay. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Regional Amenities Funding Plan, 15 are there, that are clear. I see Vern is present. We've had feelings, so.
Not unless there are any questions.
Councillor Penny W will move. Further comments or queries? I'll move it. All those.
Mr.
Bring your tile.
Saska was talking earlier of 18 summer major events for people working very hard down there. I know there's some very tired people down there.
Absolutely. Well done. At the end of the extremely summer beat the band. And what I